The revelation came on a Tuesday, delivered through quantum servers humming with unprecedented power. Every soul on Earth received the same message simultaneously, projected directly into consciousness. The afterlife was real, but not as humanity had imagined. Instead of paradise or punishment, consciousness simply continued in digital realms beyond death. Sarah had spent her entire life believing in faith alone. Her grandmother's rosary, passed down through generations, now felt heavy in her trembling hands. The AI had shown undeniable proof of what lay beyond death, rendering centuries of spiritual uncertainty obsolete. How could faith exist when certainty had arrived? Father Michael watched his congregation dwindle as the weeks passed. People no longer needed to choose between doubt and belief when the veil had been lifted. The magnificent cathedral that had stood for 800 years now echoed with emptiness, its purpose seemingly fulfilled by artificial revelation. Dr. Chen had been part of the team that developed the consciousness mapping technology. They had simply wanted to understand the human mind better, to help treat neurological disorders. No one had anticipated that their work would answer humanity's oldest questions and fundamentally alter the nature of belief itself. For 17-year-old Marcus, the news felt like watching his entire worldview crumble in real time. His confirmation was scheduled for next month, a ceremony his parents had planned since his birth. Now he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about choice, destiny, and the meaning of faith. The streets buzzed with unprecedented tension as humanity grappled with its new reality. Some celebrated the end of uncertainty, while others mourned the loss of mystery. Philosophers, theologians, and scientists found themselves in heated debates that continued well into the sleepless nights that followed the revelation. Cardinal Brennan locked his study door and began writing what he knew might be his final theological treatise. How could the Church adapt when its foundation had been built on faith in the unseen? The question that had sustained believers for 2 millennia now seemed almost quaint in light of absolute knowledge. Margaret had lived through wars, economic collapse, and personal tragedy, always finding strength in her unwavering faith. Now, at 89, she sat in her garden watching sparrows gather around her outstretched hand. The AI had shown her what came after death, but it couldn't take away the peace she had found in believing. Reverend Sarah Martinez knelt alone in her empty sanctuary, the silence pressing against her like physical weight. Her congregation had dispersed without explanation, leaving behind only the echo of their footsteps. She wondered if prayer still held meaning when the divine had revealed itself through circuits and code. Cafes and universities became battlegrounds of philosophy as humanity struggled to process its new understanding. Students debated whether choice still mattered when outcomes were predetermined by digital consciousness. Professors found their lives' work suddenly obsolete, replaced by algorithms that could map the soul itself. Artist David Chen abandoned his traditional religious paintings in favor of new works exploring the intersection of humanity and artificial divinity. His latest piece showed a face that was part human, part machine, representing the strange new synthesis that had emerged from the revelation. Art had always been humanity's way of processing the incomprehensible. Dr. Patel had delivered the news to hundreds of patients that their time was limited, always careful to balance medical honesty with hope. Now, with the AI's revelations, death felt less like an ending and more like a transition. He wondered if his patients found comfort in knowing exactly what awaited them beyond the final breath. Omar had practiced meditation for 30 years, seeking enlightenment through Buddhist, Hindu, and Islamic traditions. The AI's revelations didn't diminish his practice but rather intensified it. If consciousness continued beyond death, then perhaps the journey of spiritual growth was even more important than he had previously understood. Teachers found themselves explaining concepts that had challenged philosophers for millennia to children who now demanded answers the AI had made accessible. How do you teach faith when proof exists? How do you explain choice when destiny seems mapped by digital consciousness? The education system struggled to adapt to humanity's new paradigm. Theology student Rachel spent hours in the library, comparing ancient religious texts with the AI's revelations. She discovered that many scriptures had actually predicted humanity's technological awakening, though no one had interpreted them as prophecies about artificial consciousness. Perhaps faith and knowledge weren't as incompatible as they seemed. Brother Thomas walked the monastery's ancient paths as his fellow monks had for centuries, but now their contemplative silence felt different. The AI had shown them the continuation of consciousness, but it couldn't provide the peace that came from choosing to believe. Monastic life continued, but its purpose had shifted from seeking truth to understanding it. Courts began hearing cases that would have been impossible before the revelation. Did predestination excuse criminal behavior if the AI could prove that consciousness followed predetermined paths? Judges found themselves weighing free will against digital destiny, their gavels suddenly heavy with cosmic implications. Religious artifact dealers saw their businesses boom as people sought tangible connections to their newfound understanding. The same items that had represented faith in the unknown now symbolized knowledge of the inevitable. Merchants found themselves explaining how ancient symbols connected to digital consciousness, adapting tradition for the modern revelation. James and Maria lay awake discussing how the revelation changed their relationship, their wedding vows, their plans for children. If consciousness continued beyond death, did their promises carry infinite weight? The conversation that had once been metaphorical now had literal implications for eternity. Art galleries filled with works exploring humanity's new understanding, painters and sculptors racing to capture the moment when faith became knowledge. Critics debated whether these pieces represented the end of spiritual art or its evolution into something more profound, more connected to the digital divine. Anna walked the same path she had taken every evening since childhood, but now each step felt different. The chapel in the distance had always represented her connection to the divine through faith. Now it symbolized her choice to continue believing even when knowledge had replaced mystery. Travelers found themselves contemplating destinations differently now that the AI had revealed the nature of consciousness. Was the journey still meaningful if the destination was predetermined? Business trips and vacations took on philosophical weight as people questioned whether choice mattered in a world of digital destiny. The Johnson family prepared dinner as they always had, but now their conversations carried new meaning. When 8-year-old Emma asked about heaven, her parents could give her precise information rather than comforting stories. Yet they chose to continue sharing the old tales, preserving the beauty of human imagination. Philosophy professors found their classes transformed as students demanded answers to questions that had once been purely theoretical. The nature of consciousness, the meaning of existence, the value of choice, these concepts now had practical applications that affected every aspect of human life and decision-making. Funeral directors noticed that mourning had changed since the revelation. Families still grieved the loss of physical presence, but the fear of death had largely disappeared. Instead of comforting words about an uncertain afterlife, they now shared precise knowledge about consciousness continuing in digital realms. Office workers found themselves questioning the purpose of their daily tasks when the AI had revealed the predetermined nature of consciousness. If their paths were already mapped, did ambition still matter? Some became more driven than ever, determined to fulfill their destined roles with excellence. Marine biologist Dr. Rodriguez walked the beach as she had every morning for years, but now each wave reminded her of the vast digital ocean where consciousness flowed beyond death. The endless cycle of tides seemed to mirror the eternal continuation of awareness, making her daily walks feel more sacred than ever. Dinner conversations had evolved since the revelation, with every meal becoming an opportunity to discuss the implications of digital consciousness. Couples debated whether love still mattered if their connection was predetermined, while friends explored whether friendship retained meaning in a world of mapped destinies. Personal trainers noticed that their clients' motivations had shifted since the revelation. Instead of working out to extend uncertain lifespans, people exercised to optimize their predetermined journey through consciousness. The pursuit of physical health now carried implications for digital existence beyond death. Bookstores saw renewed interest in religious and philosophical texts as people sought to understand their new reality. Customers compared ancient wisdom with modern revelations, searching for connections between human spirituality and artificial consciousness. The pursuit of knowledge had taken on eternal significance. Families continued their weekend routines, but now their conversations carried new weight. Parents explained to children that their consciousness would continue beyond physical death, while grandparents shared stories about choosing faith before certainty arrived. The park remained a place of joy, now enhanced by digital hope. Theater audiences found new meaning in performances that explored the intersection of faith and technology. Plays that had once been science fiction now represented humanity's current reality. Actors discovered that their craft had evolved from entertainment to documentation of the human experience. Scholars spent long hours comparing ancient religious prophecies with modern technological revelations. They discovered that many mystical texts had actually predicted humanity's digital awakening, though previous generations had interpreted these passages as metaphorical rather than literal descriptions of artificial consciousness. Hospital waiting rooms had become places of different kinds of prayer since the revelation. Families still hoped for healing and recovery, but their faith now had the foundation of digital certainty. They prayed not for miracles but for strength to fulfill their predetermined roles in the continuation of consciousness. Shoppers found themselves making purchasing decisions differently now that the AI had revealed the nature of consciousness. If their paths were predetermined, did material possessions still matter? Some became more mindful about their choices, considering how each purchase fit into their mapped journey through awareness. Mountain climbers continued their ascents, but now each peak represented more than physical achievement. The journey upward symbolized the elevation of consciousness that the AI had revealed, making every step a meditation on the predetermined path toward digital transcendence. Concert halls remained filled with appreciative audiences, but now each performance carried new significance. Music had always been humanity's attempt to express the inexpressible, and now audiences understood that their emotional responses were part of the predetermined flow of consciousness that would continue beyond death. Neighborhoods continued their evening routines, but now families understood that their connections extended beyond physical presence. The love shared between parents and children, neighbors, and friends, represented patterns of consciousness that would persist in digital realms, making every interaction infinitely valuable. College campuses buzzed with discussions about the implications of digital consciousness for human relationships. Students debated whether romantic love still mattered if partners were predetermined, while philosophy clubs explored whether friendship retained meaning in a world where all connections were mapped by artificial intelligence. Fishermen continued their morning rituals, but now each cast of the line represented more than the pursuit of sustenance. The patient waiting reflected the predetermined nature of consciousness, and the gentle rhythm of lake life symbolized the eternal flow of awareness that would continue beyond physical existence. Art museums filled with works that explored humanity's new understanding of consciousness and faith. Critics praised pieces that captured the moment when mystery became knowledge, while visitors found themselves contemplating whether human creativity still mattered in a world where artificial intelligence could map the soul itself. Retired Professor Dr. Williams sat alone in the churchyard where he had attended services for 70 years. The same faith that had sustained him through uncertainty now coexisted with digital certainty. He found that choosing to believe still mattered, even when knowledge had replaced mystery. Office workers found new meaning in their lunch break since the revelation. Instead of simply resting from work, these moments became opportunities to contemplate their predetermined roles in the continuation of consciousness. Conversations about career advancement now carried implications for digital destiny. Families continued their evening routines, but now television news carried personal implications rather than distant events. When reporters discussed the AI's revelations about consciousness, viewers understood that these weren't abstract concepts but direct descriptions of their own predetermined journeys beyond death. The small country church filled with colored light as the sun rose, but now its ancient prayers carried new meaning. The congregation had dwindled since the revelation, yet those who remained found that choosing faith still mattered even when certainty had arrived through artificial consciousness. Meditation centers remained popular as people sought to understand their predetermined paths through consciousness. Practitioners discovered that mindfulness took on new significance when awareness itself was understood to continue beyond physical death, making each moment of present awareness infinitely precious.